Welcome back. I'm Tyler, you're watching Scarfing Scarves, and welcome to the 8th installment of Last Week Lolita News. At the top of the segment, Alice and the Pirates reminded us all of our imminent demise with their latest release of the Ticking Clock series. The Peter Pan-inspired print comes complete with a depiction of London in the midst of the industrial age of smog, and cuts range from micro-boobs at midnight to substitute teacher who's given up on her dreams. The lack of any real adornment seems to go well with the overhanging notion that their customers could kick it at any time, and sources say the brand may have plans to continue in prints that would make even the most discerning of weezings proud. Moving on to new releases, Angelic Pretty rode the Son of God a little too hard with their latest release of the Holy Lacy Doll series. The debut reached middling success among those who don't mind being plastered in religious iconography, and the rest of the populace is waiting for something that doesn't involve symbols oft associated with nailing a Jewish man to a couple of fence posts and calling it a day. Inquiries into whether or not AP would continue to corner the Catholic market were met with confused silence by local priests, and while it took several tries to get an opinion out of the parishioners, they did throw communion wafers at my head before telling me exactly where I could go to find out. It'd be too hot to wear a blouse, and the devil doesn't give a damn. Speaking of the undying pit of hell, Lolita fashion YouTuber Lovely Lore revived the zombie corpse of Anime Matsuri drama in a video that was about as shocking as a bran muffin in the middle of a gluten-free food desert. Which is to say, only shocking if you have some kind of gut disorder that makes you hypersensitive to things that are a non-issue to the rest of the populace at large, and are hell-bent on shrieking through the streets to anyone that will listen. The video was an expose of non-opinion over the controversy surrounding the Shop in Wonderland store owned by Anime Matsuri co-founders John and Denise Lay, and outside of expressing absolutely nothing more than the 2-minute and 13-second equivalent of a shrug in the general direction of anyone that was mad, the video had fantastic success in assuring that anyone who shopped there would still be shot on sight. Cue Ruffle Chat throwing a hissy fit in the middle of it all, and you have your average day as a member of the Lolita community. That said, Ruffle Chat may be right. To find out why you'd be better off facing a horde of the undead than to spend one dime at Shop in Wonderland, we turn to Last Week Lolita News' first special segment. Outside of owning the Shop in Wonderland store, John and Denise Lay are the husband and wife team behind one of the top 10 anime conventions in all of America. Anime Matsuri 2016 totaled just over 30,000 attendees. Everyone not overly familiar with normal social interaction was there, and the event went off without anything more apocalyptic than the nerd community's visceral resistance to bathing or soap in general. Contrast that to the events of 2015 and their corresponding fallout, and you have something that the Lolita community is not soon to forget. But we won't get to that just yet. You're going to need a history lesson. And since I don't have all day, you're going to get it fast. So buckle up, Buttercup. It's going to be a bumpy ride. In the beginning! It's 2007, and before Google tracked our preferences for everything from sofa sets to sexual lubricants, John and Denise Lay owned an arcade/store called Planet Zero. Their business was a haven for the type of misfits one would associate with playing outdated video games in a room about as dark as the under-eye circles of a cosplay stripper, and their customer base soon drew a following loyal to the nerdy cause. No one was more loyal to that cause than Mike Udom Pongsuck. Granted, it is that naive loyalty that will eventually drive his face straight into the ground, but we're not there yet. Two things should come to mind when you hear Udom Pongsuck: access to large amounts of money, and a boyish dream so obnoxiously innocent that any reasonable person should want to read him the ending of Old Yeller on a loop until he cries. It is the possession of those two traits that make him the prime target for the machinations of John and Denise Lay. Because you see, John and Denise weren't satisfied with the pocky-stained pocket change of their little flock. They wanted more. And with Mike Udom Pongsuck, they knew just how to get it. For Udom Pongsuck's most cherished dream was for Houston, Texas to have a first-rate anime convention. The Lays knew this, and after drawing up a contract in which Udom Pongsuck would loan them $50,000 to pay for the renting of the George R. Brown Convention Center and any other fees, the first Anime Matsuri was born. The money was supposed to be paid back in installments of $10,000 by September of 2007. Udom Pongsuck didn't get a dime, and the first Anime Matsuri is widely agreed upon to have gone off with all the organizational prowess of a shotgun wedding. The convention was a disaster, the Lays reneged on their promise to pay back their childlike investor, and the sparkly whimsy of that not-so-young man died a cruel death beneath the unforgiving fist of cold hard reality. Or so you would think, because Udom Pongsuck had not given up. I'm sure it helped that he wasn't alone, since Anime Matsuri had also neglected to pay the George R. Brown Convention Center the entirety of its fee as well, but that's neither here nor there. Rather than listening to even the slightest bit of common sense when it comes to dealing with the types of people who rub their hands and cackle for fun, Yudong Pongsuk stayed on staff for 2 more years to the tune of loaning the Lays $46,000 more. Of course, he never saw a red cent of it back. It was like taking candy from a baby after all. If by taking you mean becoming the baby's friend so you could take their candy, smack them across the face with it a couple of times, and then ask for more. Perhaps it was the dizziness of being banged about the head with a lollipop. Maybe the little boy in Yudong Pongsuk grew up just enough to realize a candy-coated hammer to the financial face when he saw one. Either way, he penned his resignation letter and emailed it to the Lays. That year was 2012. You remember that arcade John and Denise ran? 2012 was also the year that their loyal flock showed up to the door of Planet Zero to find a legal notice stating that the landlord was demanding roughly $85,000 in unpaid rent. Turns out that George R. Brown and Mike Yudong Pongsuk weren't the only ones they owed money to. When Yudong Pongsuk talked to John again in 2013, the Anime Matsuri head told him how he, quote, felt betrayed, how Yudong Pongsuk's resignation letter had been leaked and John had had to spend months cleaning up the mess. You know, the mess he was responsible for? The mess specifically made by John? John's mess? According to the ex-arcade owner, it may as well have never happened. That is, until the Houston press got a hold of his skeleton-ridden closet. For John and Denise Lay had finally stepped on one too many tea parties. That year was 2015. Now that we're within touching distance of the lovely lore hubbub of 2016, there are 2 reasons I shoved the equivalent of the Encyclopedia Dramatica into your collective skulls. For one, just telling people that John Lay took $100K off some guy called Yudong Pongsuk will make people say, why should I give a Yudong Pong fuck? And secondly, it explains half the reason why simply bringing up his name is enough to make a horde's worth of people want to hit you repeatedly in the face with a shovel. To find out why the Lolita community would be at the front of that line, you'll just have to wait for part 2. Because that's all the time we have for tonight. Thank you for watching Last Week Lolita News, and be sure to tune in next week when we go head-bow deep into the burning trash fire some bald man wreaked on the Houston Lolita community. Unsuspecting women receive messages that even a Tinder user would reconsider sending, and our favorite bald con man steps in it deep in the next installment of Last Week Lolita News. This has been Tyler. You've been watching Scarfing Scarves, and I'll catch you next time.